Okay, folks. So yeah, you're welcome back. Week 2 of this course, and so I'll just let you know. Oh, particularly welcome. I know there's a few people who weren't here last week who joined this week. So welcome particularly to you. And yeah, just to remind you, my name is Nyanadara, and maybe Daniel, if you could mute everybody, apart from just to let you know what we're going to be doing this morning. So first of all, we're going to have our home groups, and we're going to review how we got on with our practice during the course of the last week. And we're going to do some meditation. And after the meditation, a 10-minute break. So yeah, so we'll review how we got on. We'll have a meditation. We'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll introduce our theme for this week, which is integration, the mandala of integration. So it's a continuation of that theme of integration. And then we'll finish the morning by setting up our practice for the coming week. So that's basically what we're going to be doing today. What we're going to do to start with is just do a 3-stage breathing space. So you don't need to sit in any particular way. In a way, it's better that you just do this in the way that you are. So you might like to just make sure you're sitting comfortably, but don't sort of get into meditation posture or anything like that. And what we're trying to do with a 3-stage breathing space is just notice what's going on, basically. So yeah, so first of all, I'll just stop talking for a moment. And first of all, just becoming aware. So just noticing what's going on. So notice what thoughts are flowing through your mind. And notice what feelings are arising in your body. And just getting an overall sense of your body with its different sensations, its different parts. And then just tuning into your breathing. So particularly noticing your breathing in your body. Particularly noticing the movement of the breath in the abdomen. And just gathering your attention around that sensation. And then just allowing your awareness to broaden out again. So having a broader sense of all the different parts of your body. Seeing if you can recognize that when you pay attention to your thoughts, that they're just thoughts. They're just an aspect of experience, the flow of experience.
And then bringing your awareness into the space around you. So noticing where you are. Also having an awareness of all the other people who are participating in the course in different parts of the country. That we're part of a kind of an imaginative virtual collective right now. And then just bringing that to a conclusion, you can open your eyes. So that's just an example of how you can have a little space in your day. So first of all, becoming aware. Secondly, gathering your attention around your breathing, and then broadening out. So last week in the course, we introduced this theme of integration. So we heard about how we're trying to join all the different parts of ourselves into a whole. And we learned about how mindfulness is a really key aspect of that process of integration. And what we're trying to do with mindfulness is keep on coming back to our immediate experience and watching out for papancha, this mental proliferation, and trying to keep coming back to our immediate sense of what's going on. And the most direct way of practicing that is by paying attention to our body. So mindfulness of the body is an absolutely key aspect of that. So we practiced that. The home practice that we did was, first of all, practicing the 3-stage breathing space 3 times a day, or having a mindful meal each day. And the other thing that I was talking about last week in terms of the home practice is simplifying our life. And there was a few different options for that. It was reducing input, cultivating discipline, particularly looking after the body in terms of sleep, exercise, what we eat and drink, and then doing things that you've been putting off. So what we'll do now is we'll move into our breakout rooms, and I'll just share. Oh no, I won't. I was just going to share the. I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll text you the questions, which are very simple. It's just the questions for this week are just to say your name again, just to remind people of what your name is. And then what did you take on to practice? So what was it that you intended to do last week? And then thirdly, how did you get on with it? So it's very simple. And one of the things to watch out for is, on the one hand, being too hard on yourself. So some of us could be quite down on ourselves. I mean, if you did something, then some practice, that will have an effect. So we can be confident about that. So there's no need to give ourselves a really hard time. At the same time, if we didn't do anything at all, then we won't make any progress. So we need to be aware of being too soft as well. So hopefully we can just try and develop an awareness, like an honest appraisal of what we did and how we got on with it, without either falling into giving ourselves too hard a time or too soft a time. So those are the questions for this week. I'll just put them in the chat box. There we go. So Daniel, are we okay to go into the breakout rooms? So
how long are the breakout rooms for? Sorry.
15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just need to, the group leaders can just keep an eye on the time to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. And Daniel, will you give us a message?
Yeah, I'll give you a halfway through message.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much. And then you'll get a 60 seconds at the end just to wind up before we come back into the main group, and then we'll do some meditation. If there are any questions that come out of the breakout rooms, the home groups, let me know. You can text them to me or to Daniel. Right, so we'll do that now. See you shortly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do some meditation. So I'll just say a couple of things about the meditation before we do it. So we're going to do a period of the mindfulness of breathing. And really the emphasis this week in terms of integration is taking ownership of what's going on, in a way taking ownership of yourself. So first of all, that's just a matter of finding out who and what you are at this particular point in time. Now there's going to be a whole range of different factors for making you who you are and what you are at this particular point in time. So whilst we're meditating, in a way, we just have to work with what we have. There's no value in worrying about the fact that we should be doing better or wishing we hadn't done certain things. That means we're in a particular state. It's just about saying, right, this is what's going on. This is who I am right now, and trying to work from there in a creative kind of way. So really, the only way we can make progress is by having that sense of ownership, having that sense of this project, which is me, is my doing. It's my creative endeavor, and yeah, just taking that project on. So if you'd like to set yourself up for meditation, we'll make a start when you're ready. So just letting yourself settle into your posture. And try not to rush yourself, just giving yourself the time you need to adjust to sitting in a new way. And awareness is a natural thing. It's a natural process. And it arises simply by paying attention. So we don't have to do anything hard. We don't have to do anything forceful. What we do need to do is make a clear decision that for the next period of time, we're going to endeavor to pay attention, particularly to our body. But before we begin to pay attention to our body, we're just going to get a broad sense of all the different strands of experience that are flowing on. So firstly, having a sense of the physical space that we're sitting in, our surroundings. Noticing sounds. And having a sense of the body. So beginning by having a sense, being aware of the face. So with awareness can come a sense of ease. So we can notice that we're holding on, that we're gripping, that we're tensing in ways that we don't need to. So seeing if we can let go of our body, as it were. Let go of the forehead and the eyes. Let go of the jaw. Allow the scalp to spread. Aware of the brain and our skull. Aware of our tongue. Aware of the neck and the throat. And letting that awareness drop down into the shoulders, the back, the hands. Really feeling that awareness is something that arises from within the body. It's not like a torch beam that we shine from outside. It's more of a light, a presence that arises from within the body. Aware of the chest and the belly. Skin touching clothing. So just being curious in a kind of kindly way, as if you were meeting someone that you liked the look of for the first time. Someone that you were curious to get to know. So having that kind of attitude towards your body. Feeling the contact that your bum is making with what you're sitting on. The legs and the feet. So having a sense of the whole of your body with all its different sensations. The soft parts of your body, the hard parts of your body, flesh and skin and bone. And also the non-physical aspects of our experience. So these strange things called thoughts. These strange things called emotions. So what are they? What's happening right now in respect to thoughts and emotions? So this is the material that we're going to be working with for the next period of time. So acknowledging the actual reality of what that experience is. and acknowledge the possibility of things moving on through the steady application of awareness. So beginning now by paying attention to the sensations of the breathing in your body. So it might be the easiest thing to just pay attention to the way the breath moves in the abdomen, the actual movement and rhythm of it. And then when you're ready, placing a count at the end of the out-breath, so entering into the mindfulness of breathing. Moving into the second stage, placing the count just before the in-breath. So as before, not trying too hard, in other words, not being forceful and rigid. At the same time, not being too loose, too vague, trying to have a clear sense of intention, a clear sense of the breathing. So it's a dance of being receptive to what's there and moving that in a direction. So a dance of activity and receptivity. In the third stage, letting go of the counting and just being with your breathing in a curious way, in a kindly way, in a patient way. And in the fourth stage, attending to the sensations that you feel where the breath first enters your body. just sitting. So folks, we'll have a break now. So if you want to keep meditating, by all means, keep meditating. Okay, so hopefully everyone's back. So I've got some meaty questions. Thanks for the good questions. So this is a question from Marie. She says, I was interested in the distinction you made regarding imagining attention coming from the body rather than like a spotlight of attention on the body. I've not encountered that before and it produced a different experience. Could you say more about this? Yeah, so basically when we think about our experience, it's like we think in terms of images or metaphors. And what a lot of what Buddhism is about is trying to introduce us to metaphors and images which are helpful, because often it's the way that we think about experience doesn't help us with our experience. And one of the ways I think we can take mindfulness, I think it might be the word mind. We immediately think of the word mind, and then when we think of the word mind, we think of brain. We know that our brain is in our head. Our eyes are also in our head. So then we think of mindfulness, or we approach mindfulness as if we're kind of looking down at our body from above or from outside. So it's almost like another image for that attitude is a bit like having a flashlight or a torch in your hand, an electric torch, and you're kind of shining it at different parts of your body. But I think it's much more that your, in a way, awareness is something that arises within the body. It's not something that comes from outside. It's part of having a part of being a living organism is that there's awareness there. And what we're trying to do is intensify that and deepen that and become absorbed in the particular subject of our attention. So I think it's more helpful to think of it coming from within. So the image for me for that is if you stay up really late, maybe you go to a party or it's New Year's Eve or something, and if you stay up so late that you actually start the night begins to disperse when the daylight comes, what you notice, there's a certain point in the night where you just start noticing that things become brighter. The light doesn't appear to be coming from anywhere. It just seems to kind of emerge into the visual field. At a certain point, the sun comes up, and it's obvious that the light is coming from the sun. But there's this lovely moment, or it's a whole series of this process of light emerging that arises before the sun comes up. And I think developing mindfulness of the body is a little bit like that, or is that it's something that kind of emerges within the body, rather than something that sort of shines on the body from outside. And I think that approach can be much more integrating, because we're trying to bring about the sense of unification, rather than the sense of that here's me over here and I'm shining a light on this thing called my breathing. That just doesn't really I think that kind of approach doesn't kind of help as much. So that's one thing. And then another question is, hello and thanks, Nyanadara. I'm curious about this idea of noticing changingness. I wonder if you could say a bit more about this. I think I am understanding that mindfulness is a practice where we are tending to present tense experiences, but I've always sensed change as having a temporal aspect. Common sayings like, things will change with time. They change their mind, suggest a past, present, future. So how can I notice changingness if I am tending to the present tense? So that, in a way, that's quite a deep question. It's almost like a kind of a physical, a metaphysical question. And the question really is, well, what is the nature of our experience? What is the nature of what's going on? And I think what happens if we're able to pay attention deeply, we stop thinking about things in the past, we stop thinking about things in the future. And when we pay attention to the present, we notice that in a way, the present doesn't exist as a fixed thing. We can't grab hold of it. And you particularly notice that the mindfulness of breathing is really wonderful for this, because the word breathing is just a word, and it doesn't correspond to anything fixed in experience. That the very act of breathing is a process, it's a flow. So when we become absorbed, it's as if it's more like, rather than this thing called awareness grabbing hold of this thing called the object of awareness, it's more like this kind of flow, or this relationship between different aspects of what's going on. So it's more like dancing, or like listening to music than grasping hold of something. So I think, so it's as if, in terms of experience, when we pay attention really, really deeply, in a sense, we notice that there's nothing fixed to pay attention to. So that notion of change kind of transforms into something a little bit deeper, which in the Buddhist traditions often described as shunyata, or emptiness. That not emptiness in the sense of there's nothing there, but there's nothing fixed that you can hold on to. There's no kind of core within experience. It's just a sort of profound flow. And if we live from that flow, then we're going to be much more creative, and we're going to be much more responsive to what's going on around us. So that's what integration enables us to do. This sort of wholeness that arises helps us be more responsive. So I hope that kind of answers your question. But yeah, it's a really good question. Often questions like that, even just asking the question and trying to find an answer within experience, helps us go deeper. So it's quite a meaty kind of thing to reflect on. One thing it also highlights that question is that language can't do justice to experience, not completely. We can only hint at, we can only use language to kind of approach or hint at a particular attitude towards experience. We can't capture the subtleties and the mysteries of human experience with language, which again is what that teaching of emptiness is suggesting, is that language is not able to capture experience. And there's another question that I have. This one is, have you got any advice for setting the right intentions before a mindful task? It's too easy to habitually think it's a tea break, I can read the news, etc. So one of the things I think about, part of what we're trying to do in these sessions is at the end of the session, create the intention. And one thing that we can do is we can just imagine having a tea break without looking at the newspaper. So we actually try and imagine ourselves into that situation. It's a common technique. It's like if, I know for some reason, the example that's coming to mind is like high jump. Apparently what high jumpers do is what they before they start their run up to their high jump, they imagine in their mind what's going to happen. And then the body kind of follows from that. I know that more in my own experience in terms of music, in terms of it's easier to, like I play the guitar, it's easier to imagine what I want my hands to do than to do it with my hands. But weirdly, if I kind of imagine what I want my hands to do and my fingers to do, when I come to doing it, my fingers are much more likely to be able to do it. So it's as if we kind of, we prepare the ground with imagination. So we actually imagine going into our tea break and what it's going to be like when we do that mindfully, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And then the weird thing is, the more we do that, the more likely it is that we'll remember when we go into that situation, because we've already kind of rehearsed it. We'll remember what to do. It's a little bit like, to use that metaphor of rehearsal. It's kind of miraculous that you go to the theatre, and it's just kind of miraculous that the actors remember all the words, remember where to put their bodies and so on. And that's because they've prepared the ground over quite a number of weeks, maybe months. They've learnt the text, they've come together with the other actors, they've learnt where to put their body, and then the whole thing flows. It doesn't take any conscious effort. It's just flowed because the preparation is there. So that's a big part of what mindfulness is about, is doing the preparation, setting the intention, imagining ourselves into that situation, so that when the situation arises, we know what to do. So I think in a way, yeah, we need to imagine really deeply in order to develop in the Dharma. That's one of the main things that we need to learn how to do, is to almost to ask ourselves the question: what would my life be like? What would it look like if I was really mindful? And yeah, that's kind of attitude we need to take. So oh yeah, great. Lorna's admiring the metaphor. Yeah, good. Okay, so what I want to do now is thanks for the questions again. It's always makes it kind of more interesting for me when people ask questions, because I don't know what you're going to ask, and it keeps me on my toes, which I like. So yes, I've talked a little bit already about metaphors. I've actually got a definition of metaphor, which let me see if this comes across. So a metaphor, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the application of name or descriptive term or phrase to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. So the application of a name or descriptive term or phrase to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. So we're not literally acting on stage when we're mindful, but there's something about that metaphor of acting which helps us understand what it is that we're trying to do when we're mindful. So I've talked, already about these two main metaphors, or these two main images for the Dharma life that we're employing on this course. So one is the journey. So we start on point A and we move to point B. We go along a path, and the other is a mandala. So in terms of the journey, integration is the start of the journey. Developing awareness is the start of the journey. But it's not only the start, it's something that we carry with us all the way. This sense of awareness, the sense of trying to become more whole. So the mandala is a slightly different metaphor. It's more of an aesthetic metaphor. I was up at the Botanical Gardens very happily yesterday, on Thursday actually, and they're reopened, by the way, up in Glasnevin. If you want something really pretty to look at, the irises are amazing. But there was a man, and he was one of the workers, one of the OPW workers, and he was making a kind of a mandala out of cacti. As you just enter into the Botanical Gardens, there's these round beds, and there's these basically what are mandalas in the ground. And they're very beautiful, a sort of circular arrangement in with a square inside the circle of these different kinds of cacti. They tend to do it every year. And in the center, there's a larger cacti that has got a stem and kind of opens out. And there's something really pleasing about doing. I was looking at the guy doing it, and he was very, very concentrated. And I thought, what a great part of the job. I'm sure some people I know would absolutely love that. So this is what we're trying to do. The reason I talked about the cacti is that it's a creative act. Becoming more integrated is a creative thing that we're doing. We're kind of trying to find this harmony. And I think the other thing about the metaphor of the mandala is that it honors the fact that life doesn't go in a straight line. And we can talk in terms of moving from point A to point B, but when we're talking about the Dharma life, when we're talking about the mind, it just doesn't move in a straight line. It's elliptical. It goes this way and then it goes that way. That famous phrase from W.B. Yeats, wisdom is a butterfly, not a gloomy bird of prey. So wisdom kind of dances around from different things. It's not just this kind of straight line. So we need these two different metaphors, because if we only think in terms of one metaphor, things become a little bit kind of disjointed or a little bit out of balance. So it's a little bit like what I was saying earlier. You need a sense of direction, and you need an activity and purpose, but you also need a sense of receptivity and openness. So that the image of the journey is really good. It gives us a clear sense of what we need to do. But if we take it too far, if we push it too far, we can become overly future orientated and overly kind of driven. And we have this idea that everything will be okay if I can be 100% mindful all the time. And then we can never quite live up to that. And then we feel kind of defeated or disappointed. So I think this is kind of like what happens if you're on the perfectionist end of the spectrum, is that you're always future orientated and nothing ever quite measures up. So the image of the mandala is a kind of corrective to that. So if we take the mandala image too far, if we push that too far, then we can become kind of overly present orientated. It's all just about being in the now, which is all very well, but we do need to actually have a sense that we're going somewhere and that we're making effort and we're moving. So in a way, what we need is a kind of a dynamic of using both of those metaphors. And if we think in both ways, we'll have a kind of balance to our practice. It's a little bit like what I was saying earlier about not being too hard on yourself, but also not being too soft. So we do need openness, we do need receptivity, but we also need direction and purpose. And there's a creative tension that arises from that, which produces, in a way, the spiritual development in the Dharma. So the mandala, this image of the mandala, particularly is particularly suggestive of integration, of this combining parts into a whole. And you could say that the aim of integration is to become one traveler traveling one journey. And very often the start of integration starts with the acknowledgement of a lack of integration. So at different times, it almost feels like there's different masters in charge, these different jockeys all riding different horses in different directions. So what we need to do to begin with, and really this is the keynote of this week, is kind of taking ownership, as it were, of ourself. Again, it's just a metaphor, like taking ownership, taking full responsibility for ourself and what we do, recognizing that we're an agent, that we have agency, that we do things, we think things, we do things with our body, and we say things, we communicate. And that this was brought home to me really, really clearly just after I got involved in the True Out in the Buddhist community in Wellington in New Zealand. I was in a band, and I think we had a gig coming up. And I often used to have this conflict between rehearsals and Dharma events. And on this one particular occasion, we had a big gig coming up at a university orientation. And Achula, who was an order member who lived in Wellington and still lives in Wellington, was leading the study group that I was part of. And I really wanted to go, but I couldn't because I had a band practice, or at least that's the way I put it to him. I said to him, actually, I can't make it to the study group tonight because I've got a rehearsal. And what he said to me was, you can make it, you've just chosen not to, which I really didn't like him saying that, but I could see that he had a point. I could not go to the band practice. I could go to the study group. It wasn't like it was being forced on me, but it's just that I'd made a commitment to being in this band, and that meant that I had to go to the rehearsal, which meant I couldn't go to the study group. So it was actually a choice that I was making. But the way I was thinking about it and the way I put it to him was that I didn't have a choice, that I was being forced to go to the band practice, but I really wasn't. I wasn't under any duress at all. It was a free choice. So what that taught me at that moment was that actually I needed to acknowledge the fact that I did have agency, that I was making decisions, and that was me doing it, so to speak. Another way that we sometimes think is we think in terms of people making us angry. You hear people say, he just makes me angry, as if that person is determining your mental state. So really what's happening is that people do things which precipitate that feeling or that attitude of anger. It's not that they make us angry. So yeah, hopefully what I'm saying is coming across. So it's like what we need to do to become integrated is first of all recognize that what we do makes us the person that we are, and that's our responsibility. Nobody else can take responsibility for that. Often what we do is we blame other people. So I was actually listening to a little talk by Maitreya Bandhu. He was talking about this topic of integration. And he used the example of being a victim. He said, like things happen to us in our lives which don't help us. I'm sure we've all had experiences of people doing things to us, or maybe our parents or teachers or people at school or work colleagues have done things, as it were, to us that have made our life difficult. And we can go around feeling aggrieved about that. And we can feel like that, as if we can't move forward until somehow that's rectified. But the thing is that, it's wonderful if you can sort out conflict from the past and so on. But the fact is that, we can only start from where we are. And if difficult things have happened to us, which I'm sure they've happened to every single person on this course, first of all, what you need to do is just acknowledge that that's happened and just recognize that the only way we can move forward is by acknowledging the difficulty and taking our life forward with that difficulty. We can't kind of in a way make everything in the past okay. What we can do is we can take ownership of what's happening now and move forward from there. So that's a little bit like what I was saying before the meditation, of just acknowledging the reality of the situation as it is, with, and this is the key thing, with a sense of a possibility that we can move forward from there. So there's a line that came to me when I was thinking about this from a poem by a poet called Heaney, who I know nothing about, but that the end of the poem is, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So it's like we need to recognize that actually our behavior, our activity, our agency is the single most important determining factor on what happens next, on how our life unfolds. And that's what integration is really about, is developing that kind of individuality where we take ownership, and we become more reliable, we become more trustworthy, we become more dependable. We do what we say we're going to do. And, we remember that we've undertaken to do a particular thing. So one of the words that we use, it's very much associated with the word integration, is integrity. So integrity has the connotation of honesty as well as the connotation of togetherness. And when you think about it, in a way, they're really connected. We can only really be honest and reliable and dependable when we're together, at least to some extent. Otherwise, we literally can't remember what we've undertaken to do. We can't remember what we've said, and we kind of we don't cohere as a personality. Yeah. So that's a little bit about about integration, I just want to say a few words about what we can call horizontal and vertical integration. So horizontal integration is, realizing what we do has an effect. So that's what I've just been talking about. I've been talking about that, about how we need to acknowledge that we have an effect on other people and we have an effect on ourselves. We create our own character through what we say and what we do and what we think. And we're trying to become more of the same person in all different circumstances, so that we're integrated in that sense. And this is something that we need to keep coming back to in our lives and in our practice. There's another element of integration which you could call vertical integration. So again, I'm kind of using these terms highly metaphorically. But what this is pointing to, this vertical integration, is that there's something more to us. There are deeper dimensions to our character, deeper dimensions to our mind, deeper dimensions to who we are. We often come into, and we encounter these often through dreams. So there might be images and dreams that keep coming to us that seem to suggest something about who we are that's very deep. It might come to us through aesthetic experience. So maybe if we see a play or a film, or we read a book, or we see an image of something, it seems to speak to some deeper element to us, or some deeper layer of mind or of personality. It might come to us through meditation. You might have encountered this in meditation, that images arise in your meditation. And so there's a sense of there's something deep within us that we can begin to bring more consciousness to, that we can understand more deeply. So I want to give you a poem now, which I think expresses this extremely well, and it's a poem by Seamus Heaney. It's from his first collection from the 60s. It's called Personal Helicon. So Helicon is, if I remember rightly, is a river, a well that a river emerged from, and a spring that a river emerges from, that was beloved of the poets of ancient Greece. It was a sort of place of inspiration. So a spring, and this is for it's for Michael Longley, another poet. So Seamus wrote it for Michael Longley. So this is Personal Helicon. As a child, they could not keep me from wells and old pumps with buckets and windlasses. I loved the dark drop, the trapped sky, the smells of waterweed, fungus, and dank moss. One in a brickyard with a rotted board top. I savoured the rich crash when a bucket plummeted down at the end of a rope, so deep you saw no reflection in it. A shallow one under a dry stone ditch, fructified like any aquarium. When you dragged out long roots from the soft mulch, a white face hovered over the bottom. Others had echoes, gave back your own call with a clean new music in it. And one was scarcesome, for there, out of ferns and tall foxgloves, a rat slapped across my reflection. Now, to pry into roots, to finger slime, to stare, big-eyed Narcissus, into some spring is beneath all adult dignity. I rhyme to see myself, to set the darkness echoing. So Seamus is talking about looking into wells, looking into the depths, into the kind of watery, murky depths, and somehow discovering something. So he says, others had echoes, gave back your own call with a clean new music in it. So something kind of comes back when you look in, something kind of comes back. And then he sort of talks about how as an adult, as a poet, he's trying to rhyme, he's trying to create rhymes and images and so on, to set the darkness echoing, to discover what's within. So it's a lovely kind of poem that expresses this process of self-discovery. So yeah, so this is part of what we're trying to do with integration, to try and in a way discover who we are, to discover what we're attracted to. And we can almost, I mean, I mentioned this last week in terms of a sense of a master current, something within us that we're deeply attracted to. So for me, for some reason, it's whales, not the country whales, but the animals that live in the ocean. I've always been really attracted to whales. I had a book when I was a kid all about whales. And when I have dreams sometimes, I dream about whales. I dream about these huge creatures that live under the sea. So that, for me, that for some reason, that really speaks to me, that image of a whale. You might have an image for you that speaks to you. So that somehow, if we can reflect on that, it can tell us something about ourselves. We can learn what kind of shape we are. We can understand how we work best. And we can have more energy in our life when we kind of know what makes us tick. So this is part of integration as well, as developing this kind of self-knowledge. So like Seamus says, I rhyme to see myself. We can meditate to see ourselves. We can be mindful to see ourselves. We're kind of learning our psychic shape. Like I say, learn who we are and how we can live. And that helps us to become more together. When we're genuinely being the person that we should be, as it were, we'll just be much more wholehearted in what we do. A big part of this process of self-knowledge, of vertical integration, is facilitated by communication, by communication with people who know us and might have known us for a long time. So the more you get to know somebody, the more you can see these currents in them and they can see it in you, and you can help people to become more themselves. So this is part of, we talk in Sri Ratna a lot about the value of Sangha, of spiritual community, and of friendship within that. And that's a big part of the function of that kind of community, is to create that kind of communication where you can help people to discover themselves as you, in that process, discover who you are. So that's quite, just to give you, to try and broaden out the notion of integration. Hopefully I've been able to do that, or at least suggest what that might be. So in terms of home practice this week, I want to just talk a little bit about that. I'm just going to check for a second to see if there's any questions that have arisen. Oh, there's something in the chat. Someone just wrote to me and said, Nelson Mandela read that poem every day in captivity. Wow. I never knew that. I didn't know he was a Seamus Heaney fan. That's great. Or maybe it's the I'm the captain of my soul one. I'm not sure. Which one is it?
Yeah, I'm the captain of my soul one.
Oh, I thought that was more likely, actually. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
He's a Seamus Heaney fan as well.
He was a Seamus Heaney fan as well, was he?
I'm sure he was.
Oh, Invictus, it's called. Yeah. Oh, that was what the film was called, wasn't it? About Nelson Mandela, Invictus. Okay, I never knew that. Thanks for that. I've always wondered why it was called that. So just now, home practice. Maybe you can you make me the host, Daniel, just so I can share a screen?
You should be able to as co-host, but I can make you host anyway.
Oh,
host
I can actually. I can. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks for that. So home practice. I'll just share the screen now. So in terms of this week, the home practice is first of all a mindful walk. Secondly, breathing space, and then tell your life story. So I haven't said much about the mindful walk. This is a new thing for this week. And the basic idea with the mindful work is that you walk, but you pay attention to what you're doing as you walk. So again, this is a key thing that mindfulness is about. It's not necessarily about doing something new, but it's about doing something that you already do with more awareness. so with walking, you can just pay attention to the physical sensations of walking. For example, one thing you can always do with mindful walking, if you're a little bit stuck for something to do, is just to pay attention to the physical sensations of the soles of your feet touching the ground. And notice when your mind goes off into propuntia, goes off into mental proliferation, and just trying to, again, just be curious and come back to the body. I keep talking about being curious and being kindly because we don't want to turn it into a sort of slap around the head. You know that, if you've got a sort of a slightly or very authoritarian parent, and every time the child does something that's not acceptable to the parent, they get a slap around the head. We don't want to kind of have that kind of approach to ourselves because frankly, we just won't want to be mindful if we associate it with a kind of censure or with condemnation or with punishment. So this is why curiosity is important. It's actually developing a sense of wonder and interest in what's going on. So yeah, so we're not, the mindful walk is not walking meditation. That's something a little bit different. That's something more focused. It's about a walk that we already do and bringing mindfulness to that. Now I'm aware of the fact that at the moment, a lot of us we're not in a routine. I mean, maybe we're in a new routine. I think for a lot of us, when I'd normally be teaching this course, a walk might be the walk you take to the bus stop, or the walk you take to work, or the walk you take, I don't know, to go to college or something like that. But hopefully you are able to go for a walk. Yeah, basically that you're just trying to do that mindfully. So I think it's a good idea to not make the walk too long or too short. So something between about 5 minutes and 20 minutes will probably be good. So it might be that if every day you go for a walk, you decide that, I'm just thinking about my walk, what I've been doing, because I live next to the Royal Canal, is particularly when the lockdown was more intense, I would just walk up and down the Royal Canal. And the canals are separated out into sections between the locks. So I could just decide that, for the next 2 locks, I'm going to try to be mindful. Or you might find, if you are going on a bus to work, to spend the first 10 minutes of your walk to the bus trying to be mindful. So yes, so you try and think of a walk like that. And try and think about how you might remember to do it. So again, this is what I was saying earlier about the importance of intention. So actually try and imagine in your mind, close your eyes even, and just imagine what that would look like, and imagine yourself actually doing it. And that'll help you to think of possible obstacles. So maybe, I don't know, you habitually bang into somebody and chat to them, or maybe your walk is with somebody else. It's better if you do your mindful walk on your own, because if you're with somebody else, you'll want to be aware of them, which is of course a really good thing. We'll get onto awareness of others from next week, but for now it's really good just to be aware of yourself. And you might need to think of creative ways of responding if for example you just don't have a daily walk. Maybe you're not able to leave the house, so maybe it'd be a matter of walking up and down stairs, or so just thinking about and if maybe if you for whatever reason you're not able to walk, you might think of some other kind of movement that you do. And maybe for example, if you're stuck inside and you do exercise, maybe on an exercise bike, just trying to be mindful of the movement that you make when you on your exercise bike. Maybe let's say you do 20 minutes on your exercise bike, you might decide, well, for the first 5 minutes, I won't put my radio on, or my music, and I'll just be mindful of my body. So there's just a few things to think about, but that's going to be one of the main things is daily walk that's mindful. And we'll keep doing that through the course in different ways. So it's quite good to give a bit of thought to that now and how you might do that. Maybe I'll just stop talking actually, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to just reflect on how you might do your mindful walk. So how might you do that? When will you do that? What time of the day? How will you remember to do it? So I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to think about those issues. So one thing Maitreya Bandhu suggests in the book is actually drawing a little plan of your walk, just as a way of imagining yourself into it. So some of you might float your boat if you're a visual kind of person. Okay, so we'll move on now to the breathing space. So we've done this a few times on the course so far. So basically, there's three parts to this. So first of all, it's like just developing a general sense of where you are and what's going on. So this is becoming aware. That's the first part. And then the second part is gathering. So this is basically about paying attention to your breathing. So in a way, you could say that the three-stage breathing space is a kind of mini mindfulness of breathing. It's a very short mindfulness of breathing. So we just spend a minute or so attending to the sensations of our breathing, and then we expand again. So we get a sense of our surroundings, our body, and so on. So it's quite a simple little practice. Like I say, if you want to boil it down, you could just think of it as a miniature mindfulness of breathing. And yeah, this week what I'm going to suggest, and this is maybe something you might want to pick up from last week, is to try and do that 3 times a day. So the really difficult thing about this is not doing it, it's remembering to do it. So how will you remember to do that? Well, first of all, when will you do it? And then how will you remember to do it? So you might like to do your breathing space sort of tied into something else that you already do. I think that's quite a good way of introducing a new practice into your day, is tying it to something that you already do. So maybe you could say that when you come in from outside, you're just going to sit down. Well, first of all, you wash your hands. By the way, I haven't said this on this course, but all of this hand washing that we need to do at the moment is just a really, really good opportunity for developing mindfulness. So I know some of the people who've done the introductory course with me would have been familiar with this, but in a way, the fact that we have to wash our hands, which can feel like a real inconvenience. Sometimes I get frustrated with it because I just have to do it so often. But why not actually make it something conscious that we try and do mindfully, and then it actually changes it. Rather than it being something annoying that we have to get through to get onto the next thing, it's actually intrinsically a really pleasurable thing to cover your hands with hot soapy water. So if we're mindful, we can enjoy it. In a way, that probably should be one of the practices for this week, is mindful hand washing. So you could do that as well if you want to take on a bit more. So you could have the mindful walk, the breathing space, and also the mindful hand washing. So again, I'll just give you a couple of minutes to reflect on the breathing space and how you're going to remember to do it. And then the third thing is life stories. So I mentioned earlier about this vertical integration, trying to see deeper currents within our lives. And one really good way of doing that is to tell your life story. So this is something that we do quite often in Sri Ratna, say, for example, on a retreat. Actually, I work with Daniel and 3 other people on the DBC Centre team, and we've been doing this, and then we have a weekly team meeting, and we've been doing this over the last number of weeks. And it's just a really fascinating thing to see sort of currents and patterns within other people's lives. And you start seeing it within your own life. As you're telling the story, you start to seeing it a little bit differently. Often it's almost like we paint ourselves into corners with telling ourselves our life story over and over, but when we do it out loud, we get a kind of perspective on it. Now, I used to think that you could only really do this on, in a more formal setting, say, for example, like in a team meeting, like I mentioned, or on a retreat or something. But last summer, me and a few friends, they were sympathetic to Buddhism, but they weren't Buddhists. We went on a holiday out to the west of Ireland in Clare, and we stayed in a little house. And in a way, there wasn't a lot to do, which was really lovely. And one of the guys, we asked him, would he give his life story? And we did it after dinner on a Saturday night. And actually, it was really, really brilliant. And I got to know him so much more deeply than I even though I spent a lot of time with him, I just learned all sorts of really fascinating things about him, and it was really, really enjoyable. So it can be something, you could do it on Zoom even with a few friends and just try it out. So, I mean, I make that kind of optional for this week, but I would really recommend it. There's more about that in the book. All the things that I've talked about, all the things literally that I've talked about. There's more in the book. So do read the book. There's some really, really great material in it. I'm aware that someone mentioned earlier that they still haven't received their book. So Daniel, I don't know if this week you can do the trick you did last week in terms of sending a photocopy of the book, like a PDF of the book. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, I can do that again.
Yeah, great, fantastic. So just to make sure everyone can read the material. And yeah, I just wanted to mention as well, and this course hasn't been focused on meditation, but do keep your meditation going. If you've got a meditation practice, meditating regularly will help you become more integrated. It's probably the best thing that you can do, actually. I'm kind of assuming that people have got a meditation practice already, but if you haven't, it'd be something or if you've had one in the past, another project for you this week, more than anything actually, would be to revive that meditation practice. So yeah, so that's all we've got time for this week. So next week we're going to be moving into the next great stage of the path, which is positive emotion, which is about developing a responsiveness to other people in particular. Yeah, so it's a very, very rich area for practice. And just to remind you, like I've been saying, is that we're doing this course entirely on a donation basis. So if you'd like to give us a donation to the Dublin Buddhist Centre, that'd be great. I'll just put the web link for the donation page in the chat box. And if you've got any questions, sort of any outstanding questions, just hang on, and we can address them later. So that's it. So thanks for listening, and see you all next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Annabelle. Bye.
Thank you.